I'm now going to introduce Nihal Athanake, who is one of our great DJs, TV presenters, broadcast presenters. He's written about music for many years now in many different publications. He's DJed the Isle of Wight Festival, Glastonbury, Festival, all around the world from Bangladesh to Zimbabwe. He's presented the BBC Two flagship Asian music lifestyle programme in 2004. He's just done many, many, many things. He's also the host of the World B-Boys Championships of Channel 4. He was a cultural ambassador for 2012. He won the Sunny Radio Academy Award Best Speech Programme for his BBC Asian Network show and the Best Radio Show in 2010 at the UK Asian Music Awards for his BBC Radio 1 show. Now, I say all that because he's going to talk to Billy Bragg and Phill Jupitus about male friendship. And then, in the spirit of friendship, there'll be about 10 minutes for questions. Then you are all going to get your pies and peas and whatever, which is served to you here, and come back to your tables with your lunch, and then pick up the themes of this morning, Larry's keynote, and then there's discussion on male friendship, or anything else you want to cover. So that's the format now. So Nihal, Billy and Phill, please come onto the stage, and thank you for doing this.
Yes. Morning, everyone. Hello. So, okay. Billy Bragg, of course, amazing songwriter, activist, troublemaker.
Yeah.
Son of Barking. Next to him, comedian, director, actor, son of Isle of Wight, but pretty much Essex now, I would say.
It was Barking and all, actually.
Was it Barking?
Yeah.
Not Newport.
I was born on the Isle of Wight.
Yes.
And they are an odd people. So no, my mum. I was 60s love child. So my mum ran away to the Isle of Wight to have me. She was ostensibly working, and then she came back to inform her father that she had had a child simply by handing me over to him. Yeah, that's my mum all over, really. So yeah, no, it was. I was in hiding on the Isle of Wight, but we're from Barking.
So from the 60s generation, not Marrakesh, not Rajasthan, went to Isle of Wight, have you?
Yeah. I mean, she could have gone down a much more interesting arts and crafts road, but she thought, no. Or what can I say? Coloured sand is a great pull to certain people.
Well, listen, we're here to talk about ostensibly your friendship, because it goes back quite a way. And the best place to start is at the start, which is how you first met and what were your first impressions of each other?
Well, we met about 30 years ago in the context of opposing the evils of the day, the miners' strike, GLC, the Thatcher government. There were a number of groups coming together to do that kind of work. It was the guys and women who had been active in the 1960s had moved on to other stuff. And one of the active here in London, one of the most important groups for staging supportive gigs was there was something called the New Variety Circuit.
Yeah.
And the great thing about the New Variety Circuit was you could do anything on there. So it wasn't just about stand-up or theatre. You could come in and play songs with a guitar, or you could do, as Phill did, you could do what we referred to at the time as ranting poetry.
Billy's talking in broad sweeps. It was the 8th of March, 1984, at the Mandela Hall of the University of Sussex. And it was about tea time when I walked into the room, and there was a Titian-haired man with a quite striking nose, I have to tell you right now, whose album I owned, and I was a little bit giddy meeting him, and I couldn't believe he was really there, because I thought Life's Alright with Spy vs. Spy was Paul Weller working under an assumed name. So that was the day.
I do remember the gig,
met.
and because I remember not only sharing a dressing room with you, but also with Attila the stockbroker
and Seething
Wells, and the two of them wrestling bare-chested on the floor in the dressing room.
It was like being in a kind of postmodern version of Women in Love with skinheads.
Yeah.
Imagine if Ralph Bates and Oliver Reed had been into the Scatterlights, and you're getting a kind of image of what it was we were seeing in front of us.
And this was and it had serious homoerotic overtones as well. They're grappling. It was in some ways as if they were fighting for the very soul of ranting poetry, I felt, rolling on the carpet, whilst me and Phil, good Essex boys, looked at them thinking, so this is what poetry is all about.
Really? Yeah. It was... And so the thing... I kind of been working on my opening gambit with Billy for months, which was... I went to Northbury as well, which was Northbury School in Barking, which was the school we both went to. And in fact, we being different ages, Billy's a little older than me, as you can see from his badgery beard. I started school on the same day as your brother, David.
Yes, you were in the same year as my little brother.
Yeah.
So you had no idea really that Phil existed. He clearly had an idea that you existed. He was trying to navigate his way into your life.
Yeah. I managed to get by March 1984. That I'd been working solo for about a year. Last Right Was Both Us Inspired come out. I got in the indie charts towards the end of 1983. So I've been, by the time I met Phil, I'd been on the front of the NME, but I was still having to do gigs with Attila the stockbroker. So
it was just before that Billy kind of. It was the year. In fact, it was almost a year to the day before you got on Top of the Pops.
Yeah.
So.
Which was down your way, wasn't it? I think it was at Southbank.
Yeah, you were at Southbank Cliffs Pavilion.
The day I was on Top of the Pops.
Your friendship didn't start on an even keel. There was a kind of there was a Padawan Jedi kind of thing, to use your favourite kind of references, because I know you love Star Wars.
Yeah.
It didn't start.
I wouldn't say it like that. I mean, it was more like two performers, I mean, I was kind of...
But he was in awe of you. You weren't in awe... Were you in awe of his ranting poetry?
No, I was in awe of the ranting poets, though, because they did have a propensity to strip off and grab hold of you for a wrestle before the show, in those, particularly at the University of Sussex, which had a roaring open fire, a la Women in Love. And so I think I might even still have the poster for that gig. It traumatised me so much.
Yeah.
No, I mean, the thing was, we were still by 1984, we were still in a period where the ideas of punk, in which we were all equal together, all coming together for a reason to fight against something. All that oven switched itself off. No, it switched itself back on again.
I thought this gig was so manly that someone was reversing a forklift truck.
Yeah. It could be, yeah. But the way... I just thought it was someone saying that your souffle's done on it. That's what happens on it. It was the other way. The pies are ready. Someone get them out of the oven, for Christ's sake, and switch off the alarm. I know exactly what that means. It will smell burning in a minute.
Yeah.
It'll be the...
Ladies and gentlemen, Depeche Mode.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, burning pies.
So what impressed you about Phil?
I think the way he held himself aloof from the seething wells Attila the stockbroker grapple was good. No, I mean, the thing that we both had in common, obviously, we both from Barking.
Right.
I mean, because, I'd sort of like, been talking, because I just arrived on the scene, I'd been talking a lot about my background, as you do initially. Phil had obviously picked up from that, and that's what he was saying. I must have said somewhere that I'd been to Northbury Junior School. For him to come and say, oh, by the way, I was at Northbury, we immediately sort of bonded over that. Attila the stockbroker and Seething Wells both went to Eton, and I had absolutely nothing. In fact, I think Attila was in the Bullingdon Club, wasn't he, if I remember right? No, it's not true, I'm making it up. But you kind of, often when you met people at a gig and you were going out in front of an audience, you were in the dressing room, it was all a bit macho. It was all a bit like, all right, all right. But Phil was a lot more talkative than that. We had something already in common. We had that background from Barking, from Essex. So, we sort of like connected over that.
So that's the most superficial part of it. But then for a friendship to develop, or for you to think, actually, this is the kind of person I actually want to hang out with.
Bill started offering me gigs, basically, support slots, because
he bought your friendship,
essentially. It was, he just, basically.
Yes, yeah.
The thing is, if you're on it was the different thing about that kind of scene that we were in. It was solo performers. So with bands, it's gangs. Bands are gangs, and so I remember when I was on tour with the House Martins, when I was on tour with the Style Council, all I remember in the vans is how foul they were about other bands, because they're rival gangs. Whereas as individuals, you just meet each other, and it's much more like a social atmosphere. And so me and Bill were just blokes that had a lot in common. In terms of our background and the area physically,
and what we were doing,
from.
holding the stage on your own, like a stand-up you know, poetry, solo performer. That, you know, it worked if we did a gig together. Having a band opening for me was the wrong sort of like cart before the horse, really, for a lot of audiences when we were first starting out. So working with Phil made a lot more sense, and he was moving in the same, you know, he was on the same tip as me. He was writing his poetry, had a political edge to it. You know, we were both engaged in the same, because also in that period you tend to meet the same artists at benefit gigs, because the same kind of people doing, you know, that's how Red Wedge really came out of all the people that I met doing gigs for the miners. So Phil was kind of thrown into that mix, really.
But of course, people spend a lot of time with each other touring, and as we know with bands, they end up loathing each other because of the proximity that they have with each other and the unnatural hours that you have to keep, and drink and drugs and all that kind of stuff gets involved, and then suddenly you're just like, I loathe each other. Clearly that didn't happen to you, or has that ever happened at some point? Have you really fallen out over the last 30
the only
years?
drugs that there were on Billy's tour were all consumed by his manager. So
It's true, yeah. Who loved a spliff.
yeah, seriously, it was like having all three of the Fat Furry Freak brothers in one old man.
That's right.
There was this incredibly avuncular, almost vicar-like character called Peter Jenner, who had organised the Stones in Hyde Park.
Yeah, managed Pink Floyd when they first started out.
You know, managed Mark Bolan, The Clash. He had a broad church of interests in
doing the Blockheads.
Yeah.
And he was a troublemaker, much like you just mentioned before. So he was kind of like encouraging me, giving me the connections and the wherewithal, and sometimes helping me with the language to connect with these kind of things. And he's I think old school is a nice way to sort of refer to him. You know,
well, it's just
he did go to public school.
One of the most brilliant things was we were in the car and we were going to the gig at Barrowlands in Glasgow, and we were tear-assing up the motorway, and we got pulled over by a Scottish copper. And Jenna just had this, when he's with the policeman, and he's like, "Sir, you were doing 80 miles an hour." And he goes, "Oh dear boy, I wasn't, was I?"
Terribly sorry.
"Oh, I'm so terribly sorry." "Oh, that's just awful."
Yes.
And then the Scottish copper, I always remember quite vividly him saying, "You may be driving a Volvo, sir, but you're only mortal."
That's right. and he said there's room in the morgue in Dunoon for all three of you. He did. He said that. I remember. I was like. But I think the real bond is the fact we were both solo. That we didn't have a gang to hang out with and go for a beer with afterwards or knock around with, because we were both solo performers. We found a little bit, you know, you could sort of like tag him along. You weren't stepping into someone else's space, and he's absolutely right about bands. They can be very, very tight.
Yeah.
In order to have a really strong friendship, at some point you do have to fall out, don't you? And then kind of build it back up again and realise why you like each other. Have you two ever really fallen out over anything?
No.
I don't think we've fallen out, but I think what's happened is the trajectory of our careers has taken us off in different directions.
Yeah.
Because for a long time, Phil was inhabited, when I first knew him, that world of both being in work and being a performer. One of the hardest things you can do I think in any entertainment, particularly in rock and roll, the most important step you can ever take is that bit where you give up your shitty day job and start making a living. That's so hard to get that right and judge it in a way that you don't. I fell back twice before I managed to do it when I was 25. And I was very aware that Phil was also working on trying to get over that step. So what we could do to sort of work with him and encourage him, he worked quite closely with my record label, Go Discs.
Yeah.
He's a great illustrator
I remember
as well.
I remember when that happened, and they offered me the gig at Go Discs. You weren't happy about it. You weren't, because I was. Billy facilitated my quitting my day job. I was a civil servant.
In a job centre?
Yeah. And then he offered me tour support on the Jobs and Industry Tour, which was that very first tentative steps of you working with the Labour Party.
Yeah.
Tony Blair was one of the MPs at one of the gigs, wasn't he?
He was, I'm afraid, yeah.
Which was the North East one, wasn't it? Was Newcastle?
Yeah, I think he probably was, yeah.
Yeah. Nightmarish, really. Some
Strange,
of the fucking
strange.
bellends we met on that tour. And at the same time, some of the most brilliant people I've ever met in my life. So it's contrasts. But so I did that tour with Billy, which is weird. And so there I am. I'm working in a job centre, and then I'm playing gigs in front of, 1,500, 2,000 people. And the mistake I made was thinking, I've arrived. That's it. Showbiz is this now. Every night it's gigging to 2,500 people. And I was completely unaware that I was on his coattails, which is the way it was happening. And so then I after that tour, I thought, right, where's my next 2,000-seater gig? And there fucking weren't any. So I had to get a day job again, which turned out to be his record company, which was at Go Discs, which was odd for the friendship for a few years, really. And I was there for about 5 years.
Why was it odd for the friendship?
Well, because then I was like
An employee.
I was writing press releases for him,
Yeah.
and he was my mate. And now there was a real job element to the friendship, and I think that was weird. It sort of got in the way.
Because also, when I went to the record company, he was there with the record company people, and as an artist, you're almost always in conflict with the record company. They're almost always trying to get you to do shit you don't particularly want to do. They're always not doing the things you want them to do. And so you end up, or they're worse than that, they're doing all the things that you want them to do, but they're doing it to the arse Martins.
Yeah.
Not you. So it's like,
Yeah.
So there's all that involved in it as well.
Yeah.
And because Phil was working right across the board with that, he became part of that. Not that I would ever say I ever fell out dreadfully with any record company I've worked with, but that did change the nature of our relationship. It wasn't the same as us being on the same side, bombing around in a van.
It picked up again. It got better basically once I fucking left Go Discs. Really.
Yeah, which then very quickly led to you becoming sort of Phill Jupitus. Because at the time when we were doing, and I had this conversation with someone, not this week. Someone said to me, "Oh yeah, I saw you in such and such a place with Porky the Poet." And I said, "Oh yeah, it was great. In fact, it was on Friday." I said, "You know what happened to Porky the Poet, didn't you?" He said, "No, what happened to him?" I said, "Well, he's Phill Jupitus." He said, "Phill Jupitus off?" "Oh yeah, that's right. That was Porky the Poet." So I can't believe it. So you had kind of two existences, didn't you?
Yeah.
There was sort of like Porky the Poet. It was this kid who worked in a job centre and did these amazing poems and stuff and knocked around with me and did gigs with me. And then there was Porky still, who worked at the record company. And then one night in the mid-90s, I guess it must have been, or early 90s, there was Phill Jupitus, this great big geezer who came around with the biggest mobile phone I've ever seen after a gig he'd done somewhere in the West End, slammed it down on top of my telly and was bouncing around my living room, telling me what he'd been up to in the last 48 hours, and clearly much more engaged. By that time I was a father, so I was less engaged with the Billy Bragg business. And so I was trying to hold that in there. But Phil, as I'd stopped being in the mainstream of culture all the time, Phil had taken up a much more predominant role in culture, and he was on telly, he was on Buzzcocks, he was doing gigs all the time, and that changed the nature of, not in a bad way, the nature of our relationship, but it did change from how it was when we were...
Suddenly it became a 50-50 ball who was going to be giving autographs out in pubs.
Yeah.
Did you have an autograph off, like an autograph battle, collecting as many as you could?
No, never
Who
did.
gave out the most in one evening?
No, never. No, that wouldn't happen.
It wasn't even that. It's which of the two of us is going to have to hold the mobile phone and take the photo? Who they give the phone to? Excuse me, mate. Would you mind? Sure. What can you do? You can't say, "Do you know who I am?" Because the next minute, "Excuse me, there's someone over who doesn't know who he is. Can anyone help us?" You can't do that. You just got to take it, suck it up, take the photo. You get used to it.
On Phil's last breakfast show that he did for Six Music, you were upstairs. You were staying because it came from your house, didn't it? Your last Six Music breakfast show, and you wrote a song upstairs.
I did
in Phil's house.
I've got the guitar with me today. He wrote it on, which is going on fucking eBay when I hit hard times. I'm telling you right now.
Can I ask you what influence you've had on each other's lives creatively, in terms of music and in terms of writing and commentary?
You know, Pinocchio's relationship with Jiminy Cricket. Bragg is on my shoulder whenever I'm making a decision. Yeah. He's got a little top hat on and a waistcoat, an antenna. Well, there, Philly fella, what are you going to be doing?
Whereas
Porky, it's really weird. But whenever he's it's odd because I can always tell what sort of mood he's in by what he calls me. If he's drunk or in a really, really good mood, he'll call me Porky. And then when he's talking to me serious about things, he calls me Phil.
Or Phil.
Yeah. And I just find it really weird when he calls me Phil, because in my head it sounds like Mr. Jupitus.
Yeah.
It's just fucking... I quite often... whoever calls me Porky, I know they're really old school mates. And it's like, there's about half a dozen people still call me Porky. He stopped for some reason because he finds it weird when we're in company. If he has to shout to me in a pub, Porky, what do you want to drink? People think, wow, that bloke just called Phill Jupitus fat. The fucking hell does he think he is?
It's a tough one because I think you're in my head as my mate, Porky, and I know you prefer it if I call you Porky, but it is that real difficult thing. I mean, it's just one of those.
It's a little bit like the time Stephen K. Amos did a stand-up routine, and within the stand-up routine, he encouraged the crowd to call him Baboon, and then the following day in Edinburgh High Street, a white guy from across the street shouted at Stephen K. Amos, "Baboon!"
Yeah.
And you can imagine the looks on everyone's faces in Edinburgh. So it's a little bit like that.
Context.
Where we live in Dorset, there's a guy who sweeps chimneys. He's a black guy.
Do you live in a time warp?
No. You have to. Where people have a lot of holiday homes, and I live down there now. But when we used to have a little chalet down there, you couldn't use the fireplace unless you have the chimney swept, if you remember that from the Victorian days, folks. But he was a black guy, and his name was Sooty. And everybody called him Sooty. And he said, I know you Londoners can't deal with it, but that's my name. I'm not going to give you another name. And I talked to him once, and I said to him,
I hope you never see him in Islington.
That's what I said. I said to him,
I'm in a lot of trouble.
I said to him, what am I going to do if I meet you one day in Brixton? What am I going to say? I'm going to get, But so that name thing is because people are,
Why don't you call him Porky anymore?
I do call him Porky.
He does, but
it's not in public. Not in public.
Swerves wildly.
Not in public. If we're just talking to each other, I'll call him Porky. But when we're out, because he's as much more high profile than I am, and remains more high profile than I am, people are much likely, as he already mentioned, much more likely to recognise him, and they'll pick up on me. As well, perhaps, but being with him. But if I am referring to him as Porky and people don't, even people who saw him as Porky don't know he's Phill Jupitus. So, I just have to negotiate my way around that little bit of the relationship,
I have a right laugh now because I started writing poetry again about 3 years ago, and I do benefit gigs now as Porky the Poet.
Yeah.
And I get introduced and they go, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Porky the Poet. And the audience go, and then I walk out the wings and I go, I went on at Hammersmith the other day and the people went, ah! And a woman in the crowd went, we love you, Phil. And I went, the clown's not here. Because I like having that life where I've got two very distinct and different working personas. It's useful. It's useful.
Have you ever attempted to A&R Billy's music unofficially? Have you ever
directed videos for him?
I know you've done that, but the actual music.
Phil, you have to understand, Phil has another completely creative side as a great artist. He's drawn some great storyboards for my songbooks and storyboarded my videos as well. Really, have you ever seen a video for Sexuality? It's just brilliant. And it's all down to Phil. So it wasn't just that the record company making a cup of tea. He was more or less the creative department there. And it was great to have a mate like that you could work with, because when we sat down and talked about these things, I didn't feel they were introducing me to someone who didn't understand what I was doing and where I was coming from, because not only did he know my material, but he'd stood in the same spot as me and done more or less the same gigs. So he was very, very influential in the way people perceive me beyond people who could see me at gigs. The MTV generation, Phil more or less, made me that person to be able to make a political point in a song like Sexuality, but do it with humour. That was really, really valuable for me.
And also, I'm very grateful to Billy for letting me do the single finest Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe joke has ever been done in a pop video. If you look up the video on YouTube for You Woke Up My Neighbourhood, I think it might cut off before the end, but there's just a bit where Billy's in bed and he's singing his lovely song, and then an entire country band comes out of the wardrobe and starts playing in his bedroom. There's a complete hoedown in his bedroom.
That's what basically happens in the video.
I'm the neighbour next door who he wakes up with his country shenanigans. And then at the end, the country band go back into the wardrobe and Billy follows them in. And then it cuts to Billy with Aslan and the 4 children looking puzzled.
It is worth hanging on to the end there.
Because it's the finest bit of act. Billy was really good at panto acting, but really...
Oh, no, I'm not.
I dream of the day. I dream of the day you and I can be the ugly sisters in the barking panto.
I'd love to do that. I'd be definitely up for a bit of that. But I did. There were Phil's sensibility, being a poet, wasn't quite as punk rock as it could be. There was a couple of times I had to pick him up off the dressing room floor and dust him down, particularly at Glasgow Barrowlands.
Yeah, no, cried my eyes out after that.
Unfortunately, there's something that you should know. The noise that the audience in Glasgow makes when it likes you is the same noise that audiences elsewhere make when they're going to kill you. So if you're not expecting that, if you're not ready for that when you go out there and they give you that roar, well, Phil came off in tears that night thinking that...
I did half an hour of material in 12 minutes.
Yeah.
And it was like imagine Motorhead doing Benjamin.
Yeah.
We weren't fucking
and I'm
about.
saying they loved Phil. They loved you. He literally was in tears. They loved you. They loved you. Go and do another one. But yeah, to be able to work with someone who's coming through like that and introduce them to audiences and I wouldn't say mentor them, but because I think the rock audiences are a bit more up for it than the stand-up and poetry audiences were.
What do each of you like as a kind of shoulder to cry on, as it were? Who's the best listener out of the two of you? Who offers the kinds of sensitive advice, and who's the one that goes, "Oh, get on with it, son"?
I don't know. It's situational, really.
It is, yeah. It depends what we're facing up to. I lost my mum a couple of years ago, and Phil came along to the funeral, which was lovely. I wasn't expecting to see him there. Seeing him and his wife at the chapel meant a huge amount to me. It really meant a great amount to me. That was.
There's a moment where when you are in showbiz and you meet people a lot of the time, and it's are you friends or are you colleagues? And there's always a moment where you realised you've crossed over into being mates, and you never know when it's going to come up. And I think the moment I realised we were mates was actually really early on, which is why the friendship has endured, which was round your flat in Acton, sitting on the end of your bed, calm down everybody, reading Clyban cartoon books. We were Billy got these when he was on tour in America.
Yeah.
He got these little cartoon books by this brilliant cartoonist called Clyban, and I just remember
Never Eat Anything Bigger Than Your Head. That's cool.
That was the title of the book. Never Eat Anything Bigger Than Your Head. And me and Billy sitting, crying. I mean, tears rolling down our face with laughter at a cartoon called "Fat Dirty Man Sits on the President's Face." And it's just a drawing of a big fat bloke sitting on the president's face. We were fucking rolling around for about 20 minutes.
We were.
And just kept looking at it again.
And I mean, the thing, it's not just about sharing a sense of humour, it's about sharing a sense of space as well. I mean, we're both, for our sins, West Ham fans.
Oh.
And, you don't meet many people in rock. If you come from a place like Barking in Essex, anywhere in suburbia, really, the chances of meeting anybody in the industry that not necessarily you went to school with, but you have a shared background with, is pretty slim.
Yeah.
So to find, and I'm not just saying, that because they're all public school, but they're not. But they're just from different backgrounds and different cliques and everything. So to find in amongst that group someone who shares your background and shares your points of references, shares your sort of sense of belonging to a particular community, is that helps. You immediately have some sort of common bond, and we've kind of built our relationship on that. I think on that bond. I mean, Phil's still living in Essex, and going to his house for the last radio show, for me, was just brilliant to be with him for that, because I think he did such a great job when he was DJing at Six Music. It's just a shame it was the breakfast show and I had to get up so early, but other than that, I really enjoyed it.
It's very useful having someone like, useful is such a wrong word to use about friends, but it's just having someone who, when you're in a situation you don't know quite what to do, to be able to phone someone. Not that I've done it often, but He's quite multi-purpose. Billy Bragg, ladies and gentlemen, is an emotional Swiss Army knife. There's a gadget for everything. There's a small
That's
tool.
your album title sorted out, by the way.
There's a
My
small
biography.
tool that will get a stone out of a horse's heart.
That's right. Yeah. And that's what a metaphor. Which is one of my favourite ones of your lines. Yeah, one of my favourite lines of yours. I think, I think we became parents around the same time. We went through the dad thing at the same time.
Yeah. Did I? Because you had a stepson at the same time I had my daughter. You got
and we all knew
boys.
each other. We all knew each other socially as well. So that's kind of been an important part of it, I think.
Have you ever been, and we're going to open it up for 10 minutes for you guys to ask some questions. So have you ever been brutally honest with each other, even knowing that you were going to kind of hurt each other by being brutally honest?
Yeah.
What such occasion?
I'm not fucking telling you. Too fucking personal, but we are.
I think you have to, really.
Yeah.
I think you have to, because if you care about someone, and I care deeply about Phil, you have to sometimes say, mate.
If you think he's earnest on stage, try and get in the wrong side of it, for fuck's sake.
You just have to sometimes, you have to sometimes say that to someone. You have to sometimes put your arm around someone and say, look, think about what you're doing. And we all need some of that. We need that from time to time as men, from other men. And we need that. And I think maybe,
I find it really interesting, though, is that because you had such a brilliant relationship with your dad, whereas I didn't know my dad. And so there was that. I've always wondered if about me, there's this, am I searching for, whenever I have relationships with blokes, I've got no template for that relationship, I mean, my stepdad, Bob, who did all the fucking legwork, I always find it really offensive in myself when I talk about the fact I didn't know my dad, because I had a fucking perfectly good one who did some great work for 50 years. But why it still niggles that I didn't know the sperm donor, who was a bloke. He's dead. A dead man in Ireland. But,
I did know my dad, but he died when I was 18, so I had that different kind of void,
So the thing is that when he wrote Tank Park Salute, and the first time I heard him play it, which is about that losing the dad, and it's weird, because you wrote Tank Park Salute probably the year my biological father died. I remember the first time I heard it, I was in fucking bits. I remember talking to you about it, just saying it's too much, it's got me,
Well, that's what you aim to do. I mean, you want to write a song or make a piece of any kind of piece of art or any contribution that gets a response from people. Now, sometimes they'll throw things at you and tell you to fuck off. And other times they sit and cry. And, we'll be doing the show tonight. We'll be touching on these issues tonight. We'll be talking about these issues at Being a Man tonight. But I think that the thing that I've greatly
Me and
valued...
Billy will be doing our UKIP mix of It's Raining Men.
Yeah. What I value greatly about Phil is...
Great mix.
I'll
be playing that on Radio 1 as soon as you mix it and master it.
Is that, you do sometimes, because of the nature of the work that we do, there aren't many people who go through face the same challenges we do out there in the spotlight on our own. And I know with Phil that I can talk about these things, but also because of my experience, I can reference for him through my experience of what I've done. So I think there's a bond there that I don't have with other friends, that both he and I are in the public eye, and how we deal with being in the public eye, how we keep control of ourselves, because in order, I believe, personally, to be in the public eye, you need to keep some part of yourself to yourself, private. You need to have that space. How to do that so that, I'd like to think that I have insights into, the challenges that Phil faces in the same way that he has from me. So advice coming from him rather than advice coming from, my brother, who's a bricklayer who I love dearly, and we do talk about these issues, but with regard to the job that we do, it would be about as useful as me telling my brother how to put a brick wall together. I know I can see where the bits are, and I know that goes on and you stick that there, but don't expect it to stand up.
It's what I do is a very, very weird job, which is kind of this kind of jester without portfolio thing, that sort of solo performer thing. And it's unbelievably useful to have a really, really close friend who does something almost exactly the same. You know?
And you need, when you're going through a really weird experience, and this job does throw weird experiences at it, it's really good to have a control. Someone you know has come from the same place, had a similar experience to you, and is of a similar age, so that you can sort of compare and contrast with what they're going through in their career with what you're going through in yours, rather than just be out there on your own with no compass. At least you've got someone to, you don't even have to talk to them really, because you can see what they're, you keep aware of what they're doing now through the wonder of the internet. So, but the value for me is having a friend to be able to talk about these things and joke about these things, and when we do a gig together, go off and have a, as we did at Hammersmith Odeon, go off and have a meal and talk about old times, the old things we did, catch up with people, who does Attila the stockbroker wrestle with now, and all that sort of stuff,
Just to be the pair of us backstage. When I came off stage and I'd given my phone to a bloke in the front row to video it.
Hammersmith Apollo, just for Christmas.
I'll never be fucking playing here again, mate. Could you film this for my kids? And I gave the bloke in the front row my phone. I came off, and I remember coming off, and I ran into the wings, and Bragg is standing there next to Captain Chris Hadfield, the astronaut who played Space Oddity in space. And as I'm coming off stage, Bill goes, "Your fucking phone!" I'd left it with a bloke in the front row, and so I scammed him back out. But
listen, we're going to...
Someone's got to look out for you, Porky.
Yeah, got your back. For anyone who'd like to ask any questions of Billy and Phil. So...
There's a mic coming for you, mate, so everyone can hear you. Here comes. Look,
Here they
bloke
come.
comes with a mic.
The microphone's great because you look like sort of Eminem. It's brilliant.
There you go.
Boom.
With making the distinction between friendships and all the other people that you can just call acquaintances, they may or may not be on your Christmas card lists, but the friendships that you sort of talking about is a unique type of bond with another person. Now, without making any quality comparisons between different friendships, I'm sure you have a number of people around you that you will exclusively say, these are the friends, these are the ones I can rely on, I can call on, can talk to. Now, what I'm interested in from both of you is, how large is that group of what you call friends? How many people do you have that you, roughly, that you say are...
Hang on, let me have a think now. There are 4, and he's one of them.
Yeah, I don't have a much larger group than that, really. And I put my partner in very much in that as well.
Yeah.
100%. And so, but the ones I really value are the ones that I've had for a long time. They're the ones that are most meaningful to me. When I was a teenager, I was in a band. We used to knock around playing my mum's back room, and those guys still live in Barking. And when my mum passed away in 2011, I rang one of them. I think it was my sort of closest friend, Wiggy. And, that night we went out for a curry. And it was exactly what I needed that night, because I was on my own at my mum's house, got to try and pull everything together. And to be able to sit down with my mates and talk about those old days and talk about where we are now and remember, the times that we spent together. We could have spent the evening talking about my mum and it would have made me feel better, but we spent the evening talking about ourselves and the things we used to do, and it brought me back to Barking, it brought me back into that space again, so I was able to go back to my mum's that night and get on with the things that I needed to do as a son.
Over there.
Something that Hardeep had said very early on about learning and listening to women, and thinking about, you're both kind of very much into the music, and my experience of learning about being male and maybe moving away from stereotypical ways of being male, I was kind of finding myself learning from listening to female artists. So Nina Simone and her For Women song, which kind of talked about women's experience of men's violence and men's behaviour towards women, Joni Mitchell, etc. I was wondering whether you two have any particular female artists that you kind
Kirsty, right
Kirsty
away.
McCall, yeah,
Kirsty.
off the top of our heads, yeah.
She, and again, because there was that similar bond, same age.
Yeah.
She was like, she came through punk like you.
Great songwriter.
Yeah.
Great voice.
I love the fact, my fucking favourite thing about her was that she chucked it in to raise the boys, just stopped making music. Virgin were like, we need a new album. She like, you can fuck off, I've got kids now, bye. And I loved that she did that. You know, it was always, she loved the game and she loved gigging, and it was just part of the tragedy of it. She was starting to really, really enjoy playing live again, which she was a bit reluctant to. Sorry.
A few years ago, I was at a festival. Someone I got in a conversation with some women about a song I wrote called "Valentine's Day Is Over," which is a song about male violence towards women from a female protagonist's point of view. I sing it in a female gender, and these women were. We were having an argument. It was civil, but we were having an argument, and they were saying that to me, as a man, I could never really understand what it felt like to be the victim of male violence, and that I really shouldn't be writing a song about that because women wouldn't understand it. And I said, I completely accept what you're saying, and you're right. But with respect, I'm not writing this song for other women. I'm writing this song for other men. I want to say, as a man, this is completely and utterly unacceptable, and I'm merely using the voice of the victim to make that point stronger. So I think just as I could learn about women from listening to women, I think I can learn about the world from listening to women. Women write about so many different things, you can learn anything from them. But as men, we need to be writing about our feelings to women, our way we respond to women, how we deal with the world as other men. Because one of the great things, hopefully we'll talk about this tonight, is music allows us to be those things. It allows us to be the things that, if you all heard Grayson Perry's list of men's rights that Jude Kelly read out this morning, if you weren't here, if you didn't hear it, number one on that was the right to be vulnerable. And songs allow us to be that vulnerable person, and to be able to express in our songs those feelings that perhaps we can't say as individuals. Music allows that. And I've found over the years that if you are, as a man, you can be vulnerable in a song. If you can put that in there, birds love it.
It's a bit of a...
Really, trust me, mate. Much more no than the macho bullshit. Birds
It's a
love
bit of a non sequitur, but I spent 3 months playing the mum in Hairspray in the West End, and I genuinely got on better with my mum after I spent 3 months
dressed as her,
playing a woman. And I did look like my mum in the 60s.
He did. He was great in it.
If you've seen photos of my mum at her 21st birthday party, then me as Edna, it's fucking twins. It's nightmarish. My dad I didn't like my dad coming to see me in it because he had a look in his eye. So that's something the Greeks never covered. Was Oedipus is all well and good, but dragging up on your old man fancying you was not covered in any of the. Oh, Freud. But I mean, and it seems trivial and facile, but genuinely, because I wasn't just dragged up. You were being a vulnerable woman with an eating disorder and a daughter in the same situation. And I got on better with my mum, a little after that.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Phill Jupitus and Billy Bragg.
Thank you. And Nihal, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, yeah.